Happy November 27th. Doesn't matter the year, it is 2018, but happy November 27th. If you had a birthday on November 27th, then you share a birthday with Jimi Hendrix, with Bruce Lee, Bill Nye, Jaleel White, Giovanni Giorgio, and the indelible, the legendary Charles Beard. Okay, so of course Jimi Hendrix all along the Watchtower. There must be some kind of way out of here. And then there was also the Star-Spangled Banner. Only Jimi Hendrix Star-Spangled Banner is the only Star-Spangled Banner that I acknowledge. So you have Bruce Lee. He says, be like water, right? Be formless, be shapeless, be like water. That's how you fight. He was born in 1940, Jimi Hendrix, 1942, Bill Nye, 1955, Jaleel White, who played Urkel, 1976, Bill Nye. He debated Kim Ham, and Bill Nye, you know, he's the science guy. So you have Charles Austin Beard. Charles Austin Beard is actually one of the most phenomenal fucking humans, Americans to ever. They say that he's been discredited because of his economic interpretation of the Constitution of the USA. He wrote this book, 1913, about all the economic incentives. All the founding fathers went from being, you know, poor, moderately middle class to super fucking rich. So he makes a clear cut. Those who wrote the Constitution became rich as fuck. So it was an economic interpretation of the Constitution of the United States of America. It's wonderful. Open it up, take a look at it. It acknowledges all the founding fathers, right, all the people that signed all the founding documents. And then it says who they were. It says where they came from, what their money, you know, situation, what the financial economic situation is. And it's legendary. It's an incredible thing. And so the people that says he's discredited were his peers during his time, which there's a big shocker, right? The peers during a person's time. Isn't it always the peers during a person's time? Unfortunately, you don't need, for scientific truths, for the truth, right? For scientific truth to last, you don't need the popular opinion. You just need for all the opponents to die out. And then for the people that grow up to be familiar with your work. So check out Charles Austin Beard's Economic Interpretation of the Constitution of the USA. Check it out for yourself. It was 1913 he wrote it. He was born in 1874, November 27th in Knightstown, Indiana. So Charles Austin Beard is also a Hoosier. So those are some birthdays that you would share your birthday with. And there's a whole bunch of things that happened, a whole bunch of events. In 1975, the Provisional IRA, the Irish Revolutionary Guard, killed Ross McWhirter. 1978, November 27th, George Moscone and Harvey Milk were killed by Dan White. That happened in 1978, November 27th. So R.I.P. Harvey Milk. 1989, the Medallion Cartel killed 110 people, and the Boeing 727 explodes in midair over Colombia. That's the Medallion Cartel. Killed 110 people. It was a terrorist attack. 1989, 1992, the second time in a year, military forces tried to overthrow the president, Carlos Andrés Perez, in Venezuela. So I'm not for sure who was, you know, who's Carlos Andrés Perez. And who are these people trying to overthrow him? We need to know both of those questions to really understand the event. 1999, the first female president of New Zealand is elected, Helen Clark of the Labour Party. So the first female president of New Zealand, Helen Clark, 1999, November 27th, she was elected on this day. 2001, the first atmosphere that we have found on an exosolar planet was found on Osiris by the Hubble Space Telescope. So there's hydrogen. There's a hydrogen atmosphere on one of the extrasolar planets. So is Pluto a planet? Maybe, depending on your definition of a planet. If it's one of, you know, this or that, either we have 8 planets, solid planets, or we got about 10, 11, 12, 13 of them. So if we got 13 planets, out of those extrasolar planets, from Pluto and beyond, one of them have hydrogen. One of them have hydrogen atmosphere. And that's on Osiris. And where there's hydrogen, you got, I don't know, hydrogen bombs or something. So 3 were killed at the Planned Parenthood. That's horrible. Right now, Russia is celebrating the Naval Infantry Day. So they got a Navy Infantry Day. The infantry of the Navy are being celebrated in Russia. Some of the other events. 1973, the 25th Amendment was invoked, and Gerald Ford was confirmed as the Vice President of the United States of America after the U.S. Senate had voted 92-3, and usually what the Senate does, the House does anyways. That's such an overwhelming margin, 92-3. So Gerald Ford was confirmed as the Vice President in 1973, and that's important because when he gets impeached, that's who the President is going to be handed it off to. So the 25th Amendment was utilized on November 27th, 1973. 1971, this is my favorite scientific holiday, my scientific event, okay? So the Mars 2, the first man-made object to reach the surface of Mars, happened in 1971, and that's about 50 years ago. So Mars 2. Mars 2 was where the Soviet Union sent a whole bunch of landers and orbiters. So they wanted orbiting around Mars, they wanted some landers, and they sent some landers, but then their landing system failed, and so you got a bunch of landers that just stuck on Mars. But the first man-made object to reach the surface of Mars, Mars 2, the probe, the man-made probe called Mars 2, which was sent out by the Soviet Union in 1971. I recently actually heard that we did something with the surface of Mars. Again, we got to the surface of Mars, so that's exciting. 1956, Alger Hiss, he just gets out of prison. He was in prison for 44 months for perjury. Alger Hiss was accused of being a Soviet spy. He denied it up until the day he died, but he did serve 5-6 years in prison for perjury, for the big trial about whether or not he's a Soviet spy, Alger Hiss. And then you had the other Rosenbergs, right, who got killed for being Russian spies. So that's the price of treason. You get your fucking head chopped off. That's how they got King Louis XVI, too. He was getting foreign troops to subdue the French people. Hey, Switzerland, can you come in here and subdue these damn French people? They're rebelling against me here. 1940, there was the Iron Guard who arrested and killed 64 of King Carol II of Romania's aides. So King Carol II of Romania, he comes from the house of Hohenzollern. He's the first Romanian pureblood king of the house of Hohenzollern. So King Carol, he defines the 1940s. He defines the 1930s. 1940 is when he's going to be deposed. The Iron Guard is going to arrest and kill 64 King Carol II of Romania's aides, but they align themselves with the Nazis. So it's kind of hard to tell who the good guys and who the bad guys are here. King Carol's a bad guy because he aligned with the Nazis. So is the Iron Guard. They aligned with the Nazis. King Carol's monarch, he was supposed to step down. He didn't step down. You had 64 of these guys in prison, and then they thought that the guy that was in charge was just going to do a bunch of show trials or didn't want to execute the 64 people, so the Iron Guard took it upon themselves and then killed 64 people that were in prison. And so the Romanian ruling Iron Guard arrests and kills 64 of King Carol II of Romania's aides in 1940. 1886, Emil Hartwig, he's a dueling German judge. He's a German judge who engaged in a duel. Not sure if he died or not. Emil Hartwig. In 1839 AD, American Statistical Association is established. The American Statistical Association has been established November 27, 1839. 1810, the Berners Street Hoax by Theo Hook. 1810, November 7th. The Berners Street Hoax by Theodore Hook was just a guy who said, I can make any house in London, the most popular house in London, and all he did was just wrote a bunch of letters from one particular address. He lived on the opposite end of the street, wrote a bunch of letters inviting people to come visit, saying, hey, why don't you see me? And after he wrote like 1,000, 2,000 letters, he just sat and watched the house that he had picked, just turn into the most popular house. So eventually, I don't think he got caught, the guy who did this, Theodore Hook. And it was 1810. There's really nothing to do back in the 1810s except for write a bunch of letters and laugh at your neighbors for getting a bunch of crazy visitors from out of nowhere. 1815, the Kingdom of Poland adopts the Constitution. Poland is going to have a whole bunch of constitutions. So this is actually, it was considered liberal for its day, but Poland has a 1997 constitution, 1935 constitution. There's even a 1791 constitution, back when the United States declared their own independence. So Lithuania, Polish constitution, they had already established it in 1791. Currently it's 1997, so I don't know. I like constitutions. I think it's important. So whereas the Kingdom of Poland adopted a monarchical constitution when they offered the constitution to Frederick I. I think it was the Great Frederick, or it's one of the main German kings. So you had the Diet, you had the German Diet, you had the Parliament. They drew up a constitution and they said, hey, King, would you like a constitution? You can put yourself right at the top of this thing, right? All you got to do is just sign this constitution. And he said he didn't want a crown from the gutter. What, you want a crown? The people want to give me the crown? I don't want a crown from the gutter. Well, hell, that's how America always chooses the crowns during elections, from the fucking gutter. If you don't get the people to vote for you, then you're not going to get any power whatsoever. So that's the Polish Constitution. 1815, 602, Emperor Maurice is forced to watch his 5 sons be executed before he is beheaded himself. It's Emperor Maurice of the Roman Empire, 602 AD. 602, right around Muhammad. Muhammad is around the 600s. All right, he was like 570 to 630. So 570 to 630, you got the rise of the Muslims, and then here you have Emperor Maurice, who's being forced to watch his 5 sons be executed before being beheaded himself by Phocas. And who is Phocas? Phocas comes out of nowhere. Even though Phocas is not a very good leader, by, chopping off the emperor's head, Phocas represents change. The Roman Empire is going to undergo some change, whether it's under Phocas, who's going to get overthrown within 10 years. So it's not going to be with Phocas, but there's definitely changes afoot. Clovis I, the founder of France, dies 511 AD, and either it's 511 or 513, and then either it's November 23rd or 27th. So really, even though we have lots of stories about these guys, we don't know what the fuck is going on. There's so many holes in the historical record, it's not even funny. 395 AD, Rufinus. So Rufinus is murdered by the Gothic mercenaries under Gaius. So Rufinus was a big minister. He's a big minister under Theodosius I, and then he was a huge minister under his son, Arcadia I, and then he gets killed. So there's an interesting story there. A bunch of rich and powerful people getting killed. I read a article about the chimpanzees. They rip apart their tyrannical leader. So there's alpha male, right? Amongst chimpanzee bands, you got one alpha male. Everybody's got to kiss the alpha male's ass. But as soon as that alpha male, turns his back, or as soon as that alpha male slips, then the other chimpanzees rip him to shreds. They rip the shit out of him. They eat him. They throw him a big old fucking party of, oh yeah, you want to oppress us? Now we just ripped you to pieces. So really, to hold your kingship in a chimpanzee club or group, it's pretty tough stuff. That's a freedom fighter, right? They don't like tyranny. Even chimpanzees don't like fucking tyranny. So why did Emperor Maurice get his head chopped off along with his 5 sons? Because he was a hell of an oppressor. Rufinus was murdered by the Gothic mercenaries under Gaius. Why? He was an oppressor. You also had Marcus Aurelius makes Commodus the Imperator, supreme commander of the Roman legions. So that's Marcus Aurelius and Commodus. They were working together in 176 AD. That's over, it's about, 200 years after Jesus was born, but about 400 years before Muhammad was born. And then, last but not least, on November the 27th, the event that I marked down here to be significant, James Pratt and John Smith was hanged in England for sodomy. So James Pratt and John Smith, RIP, they're hanged in England for sodomy, for having gay sex with each other, and that's less than 200 years ago. In the honky motherland, in the great civilized nation of England, James Pratt and John Smith were hanged for sodomy. And that's November 27th. How much time? 15. So, I want to expand on some of these stories, but I think I'll actually come back. 15 minutes is long enough. So I want to expand more on the Clovis the First dying, Emperor Maurice dying, and Rufinus dying. These are all, this is 400, 500, 600 AD, and that's pretty much it. I just want to really expand on those three old stories. The Romans and the Greeks, they don't move me. So when I find out about a tyrant dying, I don't immediately say, oh no, not Emperor Maurice. Emperor Maurice got beheaded? Not the great Emperor Maurice. What are we going to do now? I think actually tyranny is what causes most of the problems in the world, hierarchy. So there was a moment of opportunity there. Phocas, he is just a soldier, so this soldier becomes king. It's actually a fantastic story, and then because Phocas is brand new, he doesn't trust any of the elite, so they kind of push him back, and so he was made, you know, to be an ineffective or incompetent leader is how they talk about him. He was only in there for 4 years or so, but he was just a soldier. So Emperor Maurice was ineffective. Emperor Maurice was actually wintering his soldiers. He kept advancing, and so the soldiers would have to spend their winters in foreign lands, and he just kept doing that over and over again. And then eventually there's some sort of petty political squabble where they got the enemy on the, up against the ropes, and they're about to take the enemy out. But guess what Emperor Maurice does? Emperor Maurice, well, or maybe that was Rufinus. I don't know, I'm getting these confused. But Rufinus, he was a shitty fucking, when it comes to military, yeah, you don't want your court rival, the other general in the Roman court, you don't want them to get more prestige than yourself. But if you sabotage another general, aren't you also hurting their troops? Well, the troops found that out with Rufinus. Emperor Maurice, I don't know. I'm not sad about it. Clovis the First, he's the founder of France. Clovis is. He's also a Frank. He's a Germanic. One of the most profound, conquering of the Roman Empire is when France was taken over by the Germans. So Clovis the First is a Frank, and then once a Frank took over France, they called it Gaul back then, but it's the modern day, it's that peninsula, right, the big fat fucking peninsula. Once Clovis took all that over, then the Romans didn't control France no more. And so that's, he dies 500 AD, 511 AD, which is about the unraveling of the Roman Empire. And I guess we can start out with that. Why did the Roman Empire, why did it go down? There's a general malaise. Everybody's just like, oh, whatever. There was overextension of their military. There was internal decline. There was a bunch of civil wars. So, yeah. More to come about November 27th coming up.